Alan, thank you so much for joining me.
Great to be here,
Yeah.
sunny California.
Yeah, right. So we're in Santa Cruz. And I just went to your show. That was cool. And I've been looking forward to it because I've been listening to your Bach, actually. And I mean this as a compliment. The first time I heard your Bach was when Dimitrios, actually behind the camera over there, he sent me a recording of the Allegro Aside from the 1005,
Okay.
from the Third Violin Sonata.
Right.
And I mean this as a compliment. It blew my mind in such a way that I didn't want to play my version of the Allegro Aside.
Oh, that's really sad.
Well, no, but it's honest because it's lacking in harmony. My
Right,
version.
okay.
I'm playing mostly the violin score.
Right.
And I don't know. Do you ever get that?
I guess that I could imagine if something, if it ends up a little fuller,
Mhm.
and then you're hearing just the one line. Yeah, it would be. But it's actually quite playable. You could totally play my
And look, we were talking over dinner, right? And you were saying you were talking about Stanley Yates, your teacher, your mentor, your friend, having arranged the chaconne in E minor, and of course,
Yeah.
we all had this phase where I don't want to change my finger. Never mind
No,
learn a piece in another
exactly.
key or
Yeah.
you know.
Homework.
Right.
Yeah. He actually, when I was studying the Stanley, he was trying to foist his E minor arrangement
Yeah.
on me,
And
I didn't think of it much at the time, but then, like I was telling you, when you were asking me about the chaconne arrangement, I wasn't. It was before I started tinkering with it. I actually had this very strange dream, of playing it in E minor, very bizarre. I didn't even have my classical guitar with me. I just kind of tried out the chords, on my steel string guitar, and I was like ruined for it. It was like love.
Yeah.
And then I emailed Stan. I was like, send me and I was just going to record his version of it.
just transposed.
Yeah, it's just basically transpose and some nice campanella finger. It opens it into a guitar piece. Guitar is an E minor chord. Unless you do something else with it. But so, and I just started kind of messing around with it, not trying to, just things started to happen like that, and it became kind of a problem.
Well, the first thing that struck me as I was watching you play, because you played a little concert here in Santa Cruz first. So, first thing that struck me as I was watching you play was it felt like the first time I played downwind with a capo in F sharp tuning. Oh, it just fits.
Yeah.
That's what it looked like.
Yeah.
Rather than this very stretchy D minor.
Totally, yeah. I mean, some pieces or some melodic pieces, if you arrange like Mallorca, fit D minor's like perfect and stuff. But some pieces, D minor's terrible, and for whatever reason, So once you do that, then a lot of these possibilities start to occur, because the open strings and the guitar, you're a professional guitarist, that that's your Houdini move, is like open strings,
Sure.
right? Because they play and you can move, right? And there's also an issue of resonance, an issue of the ancientness of the actual way, and this is something we can actually talk about. It occurred to me, not the espresso's kicking in.
Okay.
But that, to me, the normal kind of guitar playing isn't the one that we've kind of grown up with. To me, the kind of, and I'm not just saying this as a criticism, but the kind of the play things on one string, I think it's kind of historically kind of an anomaly for the guitar. When you see some Murcia pieces and the Baroque guitar stuff, they play it's across the strings. The interaction of those strange resonances, and I'm sure the Baroque lute came out like that as well, because the notes are so autumnal. They die so quickly. We can afford that to happen. And then so my school of guitar playing, which is Stanley's school really, particularly Stanley Yates, is to start to lean into that a lot, to where it becomes like, in Baroque music, it becomes a resonance, it becomes just what the instrument is, but even in other later pieces, it becomes like a pedal, like a sustain pedal of such, so once it stops being legato, to me it starts to sound amateurish, it starts to sound bad.
I know what you mean.
It sounds choppy, as Stanley would say, it sounds choppy.
Yeah.
And so that's always my goal, and I go to great lengths to get legato, to buy legato. With the Baroque stuff, it's a beautiful resonance. It exists in the Baroque ideology almost, because you had that they had harpsichords and clavichords with stops that they would pull out.
Yeah.
That's how actually Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata was intended to be done, with this stop thing pulled out, where it all just rings, just over rings. Yeah.
Wow.
It's like it's comma una fantasia, like it's like a Baroque fantasy.
I see.
It's like this pastiche thing almost. You know, it's like almost like a Bach thing.
Right.
But there's writings of C.P.E. Bach, I think, when talking about I forget what they call it. It's something to do with when you're improvising, same thing. This can be very inspiring if the over-ringing resonances don't disturb you too much. So this was a normal thing, this sound. On the guitar, it's much more subtle, right? Because the notes die so quickly. And then you also had the the viol d'amour. You know, the one that had the sympathetic strings underneath.
Yep.
So what happens is, when you have this kind of over-ringing, the instrument, whatever, can become kind of its own little cathedral. You know, like a miniature cathedral of sorts. And I always think of the guitar as that, like if you lived in the guitar, you know, it is this it's strings with architecture, right? It's got its own acoustics. So when you lean into those sonorities, the over-ring, it enhances that aesthetic, I think, and to me that sounds good. It sounds right.
To me, it sounds great, because I don't know about you, but when I'm listening to your Bach Chaconne or your Allegro Assai or even your first cello prelude, I'm recalling elements of Bach, but other pieces of Bach.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm kind of like. Well, Stanley said this to me. It wasn't like an accusation. It was like, it's like, yeah, you started listening as a kid to big stuff, big Bach pieces, and didn't get like, so when I was like 11, I went and found this little cassette at the store. It was like, you know, the double violin concerto, a couple of Brandenburg, you know, this was the stuff that got me excited. And I was just playing electric guitar as a kid, you know, I just wanted to go to the guitar store and defeat my enemies.
Right.
And play the chromatic fantasy and fugue with two hands, you know. And but then when I started, you know, it was only when I was a little, you know, like 15 or so, and I just forced myself to read music. I actually went, when I moved to America, my parents took me to this guitar store in Houston. It was amazing. It had guitars, and it had all this music, you know, classical guitar music. I'm sure it still exists. But I just bought the 4-lute suites, you know, the Frank Kuntz book. And I just started learning the 995. I just started doing that, you know. So
we didn't know any better.
I didn't know exactly.
You
just,
that's what
no
I did.
teacher, no nothing. You just just sheer will.
Yeah.
And but the love of the sound of it, just like, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. And your imagination was fueling the work, you know. So I remember that, and before that too, I had a Julian Bream cassette, and I basically learned the famous beret by ear by playing, you know, learning one line and trying to stick the other line. I don't know how accurate it was. Stanley funnily quipped it. He says, I think that's what Paul McCartney did, but came out as Blackbird.
That's hilarious.
Came out as Blackbird.
I could see that resemblance,
So
that's funny.
Yeah, so there is a truth to, like, I think you should always have that and as a guitar player, I think you should always have big stuff that you relate to the other stuff. So when you play, Mearns or Fernando Sorga, you should have, Beethoven and Schumann, Schubert in you to hear that, you know what I mean, for gestures, orchestral type things that we can do, kind of. And definitely with Bach, I just those rich harmonies, that's what I love, And so he definitely reduced his ideas, because you could see what he did, even with that famous E major violin prelude. I think it's the 29th cantata.
Yeah, the D major cantata.
Right,
Yeah.
Exactly. Which is amazing. It's probably the best one.
Yeah.
Because the other movements
Exciting.
are so great.
Yeah.
As well, he kind of steals one of the B minor mass. One of my favorite. He's just kind of shoves it in there too. But when you see what he does with just the interplay, that's without Allegro aside. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Or even the Brandenburg concerto. Dun 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 dun. Dun, dun, dun,
Yeah.
dun, dun,
Right,
and that movement actually
Yeah.
is Allegro assai, which is nothing to do with play it as fast as humanly possible.
That's right.
It's an affectation.
Yeah.
It's very joyfully, very cheerfully. So if it's too fast, you just get this weird.
That's right.
Some kind of caprice or something.
That's right.
You lose the joy and the ease of it. So that's a complete non sequitur. I don't know what I'm talking about. But yeah, having big stuff to inform.
Yeah.
Your ideas, and just to have ideas, just have ideas about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Think of something, like the Glenn Gould thing. Like even if it's not even if it's not like an advisable idea, don't do what's already been done.
Yeah.
For crying out loud, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or don't record the way someone's already,
Yeah.
So there's that kind of rule of like do something that's different or interesting. Or it just has this kind of like intrinsic juice to it. Has this energy. Has this own turbine of creativity, and find that and lean into it. That's what I try and wait for. I don't do anything if it's not kind of given and has its own power.
Yeah.
Like the music wants its own thing.
Right.
Like it has agency.
I want to ask you about that because when I was watching your conversation with Stanley Gates, you were talking about the structure of the chaconne, and that's when I learned about the 33 and his wife was 33.
Well, that's just my little theory of that. I don't know if that's true, but that's
it's cool. It's cool. I mean,
but we both agree. Me and Stanley agree that the chaconne, that first section, is even if that just existed, it would be the best piece of music ever written.
I can see that.
And it would be an even more perfect chaconne form-wise because it's just got this perfect arc.
Right.
It has this
Right.
has this French origin. And I keep adding these theories
That's okay.
that come to me because I think about it. There's some things that disturb me. I think about them, and I'm like, why? And there are things in Bach that are very structured, and then obviously the very strange. The whole thing plays out at 64 variations, right? Which is 4 cubed, right? So you have this strange circling of the square with that, in a sense, plus the first section being 33 variations, the life of Christ, his wife died, so in this kind of tandem elegy passion, miniature passion, I think of it as. And then there's strange things I've been thinking about recently. I haven't actually discussed this with Stanley yet, but I'm sure I will. I've always thought, because when I heard how I wanted to play the kind of first part of it, I actually call it the overture in a slightly more dotted way. I was with my family. My mom was in the hospital actually, in Duke University, and Duke put on. I was actually Mozart's arrangement of Handel's Messiah. Mozart put a fresh coat of paint on the orchestration and switched up some of the arias to be better matched to the right voices. And he was a huge Handel freak, Mozart. But when you hear that opening to the Messiah, and then you think of the Chaconne, it's like that's what that is.
I see what you mean.
You know, so it's not just we've grown up obviously in the guitar world and the violin world and the Busoni piano world with this kind of really romanticized, kind of bombastic entrance of the Chaconne. You know, it's like this, you know, as if it's Mahler or something, or Brahms.
We're trying to make it big. Yeah.
Right, but where do you go from there?
That's right. That's right.
But when I hear it, like, I hear that French overture kind of style, right? And I remember talking to Stanley about that initially. He's like, "Wow, like a French overture?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "I don't know if I did." But anyway, we both kind of settled that, yeah, that's kind of what it is. It's its own piece almost. It's its overture, which is a very strange idea, right? If we were to concede that it is in fact some kind of little miniature passion, or an homage to his wife. What does that mean then? Why would you do this French overture? And I think of Bach is obviously a profoundly religious person. He's also a Protestant, very early goings Lutheran. Very strangely Protestant thing to do, and kind of secretive. Bach would do a lot of like encoded things, right? Little secretive encoded things. Now doing a French overture to his king,
right?
Like Christ is the king,
right?
The suffering Christ, this kind of lament as a French overture type, this dotted thing. Usually French overtures are kind of this haughty and kind of nonchalant, and like Louis the 14th has arrived, right?
Right.
There's a lift and then a step through.
That's right.
But then you think of like the Via Dolorosa, so this is what I think of that as, and I might be completely talking out of my arse. So it sounds like the kind of thing he would do, almost like a product, like a secretly like, I'm gonna write. This is, you think the Son can, the divine right of kings. This is time of, this is Rousseau. This is the start of modernity, and people had to sort of develop their own agency. What's the word? Getting delivered. What was nonsense? What's it called? Anyway, it's Kant. Kant called it something. They basically developed their own ability to use your own reason to figure things out. So that French overture, to me, sounds now like something meaningful. Like not like a middle finger or anything, but like I'm going to put this onto the actual, his royalty, which is not a man.
Yeah, right.
And someone who dealt with royalty all the time.
That's right.
Who was put in prison by royalty, was treated well by the Brandenburgs,
I didn't know that part of the
well,
story.
there was some very enlightenment. When the Enlightenment occurred, power actually started to become much more consolidated to monarchs, which was, we think of that as being more authoritarian, but it was actually the opposite. Because you remember from this kind of feudal system, which was a lot more kind of abuse, and localized abuse and lack of continuity, to like, no, this is our king is good. Almost like more maybe how progressives might think of like a well-functioning government, kind of like being safe because we have this
I see where you're going.
kind of, So there was that happening as well. So a lot of these kings, like Frederick the Great, who CPE Bach worked for, and Bach famously wrote the musical offering for, he would have implemented a lot of very kind of like enlightened new policies and changed life for people and made people more autonomous, more protected under the law. So it wasn't all kind of crazy mad tyrants, you know. It was like strange time when you think of some monarchs really consolidated their power, and that's what was hilarious about Napoleon, is he was like the hero to knock all that down, and then he became that. But even Napoleon in his emperor phase had he enforced a lot of good things that made the way for the modern, what we would think of as the republic. And, you know, anyway, so the overture of the Chaconne is a bit, I think of it in those terms a little bit, of Bach thinking like, Louis you know, this is.
Because you mentioned to Stanley that there's this emotional story, right? Yeah. His wife dying at the end of the procession.
Sudden tragedy.
Right, and then what do you say? Like there's like a glimpse of light when the D major begins. There's something happening. So,
well, to me, I think he was finished. He had finished it.
Okay.
I think he'd done it.
Yeah.
Right, and when I've always heard people play this, and it's always bothered me, the shift into the parallel major section, into E major.
Okay. Sure. Why not?
Well, really, G minor,
Got
D
it.
major,
Got it.
Baroque temperament.
Got it.
So, and this is one of the wee discoveries just from tinkering around and like responding to it. It always bothered me when people kind of end the first section, and then they would just be like bling, you know, out of nowhere.
Yeah.
My idea, which I think is true, is that nearly all large-scale minor pieces that Bach, with very few exceptions, would end on with a Picardy third of a major resolution. It would almost be like immoral to not do that, you know, and rare, and it does happen, but it's very rare, right? So such a large-scale piece like that, you know, this is one of the things that kind of came to me was like, when it resolves and you have a big trill, and a lot of times these cadences would be the kind of breeding ground of a lot of flourishes, and a lot of, you know, Baroque, you know, excess, you know, this is kind of to be adorned, to be, you know, add ornaments, you know. So I started doing that, just in an art, like we mentioned Robert Hill to me, and he's one of the people I would listen to, you know, and when you see, sometimes he'll put a performance score up, and you'll hear him play, and then you see, well, it's just a chord, and he's like,
all over the place.
you know, and it's like, yeah, that sounds right, that just sounds right, you know, so, when I was ending that minor section, you know, one of the big things was actually just ending on this suspension,
right, and
then the resolution of that is the first chord.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense.
And then it's like, because it could have been over then, you know, so that's what makes logical sense to me. And then there's just this kind of like we, you know, we talked about this kind of rhetorical idea of challenging a thesis, you know, with an antithesis, right? And to try and find some kind of truth, right? So Bach is always challenging the initial, it depends on the style. It's sometimes there'll be kind of a rhetorical doubt that'll come into a very calming, beautiful piece. And this is kind of the opposite, I think. It's just all rhetorical doubt and suffering. But then there's this kind of ember that just comes out that he didn't expect. And he's obviously just playing, you know, improvising, and then it just starts to grow, and he blows on it, and you get this kind of St. Matthew's Passion type play on the major overture, in a sense, you know, this beautiful kind of diamond-esque counterpoint that just grows, and then it starts to grow into these trumpets and cherubic choirs eventually.
See, I get what you say. One of the questions I wanted to ask you was this, which was, if we're listening to the same kind of Bach we're listening to the Brandenburg concertos, and then there's a trumpet in there, right? The second one. If we're listening to the D major cantata, there's a trumpet in there, so we can hear trumpets, and that's what Bach does to trumpets. And then if we hear his dark choral pieces like the St. John and St. Matthew Passion, that's where the ostinato bass is going,
Totally.
and that's where you bring it in, right? In some of the variations, you bring that in. I can hear, and we can go like, oh, that's probably where you picked it up.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you a more philosophical question, because when you said to Stanley at the beginning of the third section, it's not even a minor chord, but there's
it's an inversion of the sixth chord.
Right? It's like, but you said something like you get dumped back into earth or something.
Yeah, well, it's almost like the clock strikes 12,
right?
You know, when he falls back to earth, and he's back into the world of nuance and reality, because we can all go through life, and you can have extreme tragedies. You can even have like spiritual sustenances, and maybe some kind of like amazing revelations and food for your soul, and joy that has got nothing to do with mere circumstantial happiness. You can have spiritual joy, and that's what a lot of Bach is about.
Yeah.
It's because this was a man who's lost 9 children, I think, throughout his life. And obviously suffered a lot professionally, there's ongoing suffering. But then there's this joy. Or it's like, Beethoven's Pastoral Symphony, right? It's the most joyful music I can think of. In fact, when I was driving down the Pacific Coast Highway, Demetrios told me, don't just cut down, you gotta go down Highway 1. It was so beautiful, I had to pull off and find Beethoven's Sixth Symphony. Sunroof time.
That's your soundtrack for the PCH.
Yeah, that's good. So there's what was the question?
Well, the question was, I haven't
philosophically.
Yeah, I have, because I haven't met you until today.
Right.
And that's always how I thought about that re-entry into
ambiguity.
E minor.
Sure.
Into the third section. That's how not even ambiguous, just very tragic.
We're back to life, back to reality.
Right. And that's how I always thought of it. So what I meant was, if we're listening to the same Bach catalog, I can understand how I picked up the trumpets, just like you picked up the trumpets. But how do you explain how someone we have met?
Well, there's certain figures, who wrote music. Someone wrote something really funny. I thought it was funny. I mean, I don't mean this in a mean way.
Yeah.
But like, these people write very nice things about the Chaconne arrangement. Some people aren't into it. Totally fine. I get it. I mean, who knows what I would think of someone. I totally understand. But someone was like, it kind of obscures the melody. and I just wrote like, what melody is that? So when in that era we're dealing with, there's not really melodies. Right? Sure, there's some like Lutheran hymns and things that people would sing, but we're dealing with figuration, and we're dealing with these little species of figuration and partimenti that everyone at that time was very familiar with, and we were trained on and fed on, grown on that petri dish of that work, these little mosaics of, and that's how they figure out counterpoint very quickly and make it work, right? So when you hear, you don't have to be a genius. It's a textbook kind of trumpet gesture. Right? So there's not that you'd hope that if people listen to that music, but it sounds like a bit. I don't mean to say that in a pejorative kind of way, but I don't try and I'm interested in this. This is like stuff I would read or listen to. It's not like homework. It's not like it. So it's something that you stumble upon, and then also just makes ideas make sense in an intuitive sense too. Like me and Stanley brought up this idea to me. I think it was from some book he read, that there's this kind of idea, a theory of, maybe it goes into certain philosophies of theories of consciousness, that that everything that exists kind of has a consciousness at some level, right? We know that plants do. We actually know that water has a consciousness. Like when you affect water with certain musics or words and freeze it, the molecular structure will either be in tatters and be ugly, or it'll look like a stained glass window. It'll look like a cathedral. Yeah. So water is actually holds information and remembers. It's bizarre. It's really weird, but it's true. Because Nobel Prize winners, you're talking, it's not just like a quacky thing.
Right.
So there's this idea then that the music itself has agency, and that perhaps even beyond we always deify composers as if they actually were. And I'm a composer, you know, I write songs, I write poems, I write art music, and I know that I was involved when it's good, but it wasn't. I didn't write that. You know, it's like when Bob Dylan gets asked, like, well, why don't you write, you know, Masters of War, or It's All Right, Mom, Only Bleeding, you know. He's like, I can't write those songs. I didn't write those songs. Those are magic songs.
When the muse chooses to strike.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is something, and all artists will tell you that anything art doesn't get created. Art occurs. Art occurs, and so you have this other idea that the thing that's occurring, even obviously Bach isn't a very stylized thing, you know, it's this almost algorithm to it, right? But there's also a lot of inspiration. You know, you like wrote Jesu Juva before every piece, you know, Jesus help me. To God will be the glory when he was finished. Almost like this kind of like a sacred kind of. I know this won't have the thing if there isn't some element of. So when you approach a piece of music, it has its own power, and this can be true in terms of reduction as well, right? So when I approach a piece of music that I have a feeling that this could work, like this really work on the guitar, I don't mean just force it onto the guitar. Like I was just finished doing like the Pavan, Ravel's famous Pavan for the Dead Princess, and that arrangement had its own agency. It had its own answers. It had its own. It revealed the key it wanted to be on the guitar very clearly to me for everything to work. See that Chopin. So even in reduction, the music has its own power. It has some agency. So that's how I kind of think when also and almost like a faith. I have a faith to it. Sounds very woo-woo and bizarre, but when I enter into it, it's like I'm like, oh, what could happen? What is like a state of potentiality? You know, there's like almost this kind of quantum hum to it, and I know it's going to give me answers, and I know it's not just me being clever or me being like, oh, look what I can do. It's this given thing that I hopefully discover or stumble upon in my weakness. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
It's that element of being supple and being like a child, being full of wonder. It's like Christmas morning. That's what I'm doing with this stuff. You know.
Well, it's funny you say morning because when I arranged one of the I think the E flat. I think it's a French allemande. One of the keyboard, one of the French suites.
Yeah.
So it's the allemande from the E flat major, and for days I'd been just listening to it on repeat. And then one morning I just woke up like, let me just.
It answered. The answer came.
That's
exactly.
right. And I just sat down in like a flow state. It just happened.
Well, exactly. Well, that's what you're saying. Like flow state. That's exactly what it is. You're in a state of that kind of creativity, or you've entered into the the hovering over the surface of the deep, that borderline where chaos and creation meet, right? And you're opening your mind to. So I just live there. I just live there. Because I'm just used to. I'm good at being inspired. That's all I have going for me. Whether it's writing songs or poetry, you know what I mean.
What's your environment like at home?
Oh dear. Well, it's not very,
It's not basic.
particularly scholarly. It's not like I have an office. Or, I usually do stuff at the kitchen, at the dining room table, which my wife's super in.
That's where I did my arrangement.
So we just have our life, in a smallish house, and so I would just have, whatever score thing. I'm such a Luddite. I can't, I asked my son, like, can you find this piece and print it out for it, Or else I'll be like taking screenshots on my phone, looking at the music, and get the printer to work. But it's like a delight, and that's what I was telling you earlier. That creative impulse, whether it's writing a piece of music or solving an arrangement, which is a kind of you're rewriting it through the guitar in a sense. So you have to have that hum of I dwell on possibility, that kind of thing. Whenever I'm getting ready to do concerts, and I'm sure you feel like if you're not spending every free minute, fixing this passage, or you know what I mean, or just running things like, and you feel like you're being like a bad, irresponsible. People are paying you.
That's right.
That's right. But I find once I get back into that world of like, what if I did? Then there's this joy, this immense joy, and it's a different kind of joy with the physical practice and the rehearsals. It's like the conducting rehearsals of your own practice. There is a joy, and even in the physical things, I get this kind of Kobe joy. I have that kind of thing. Like I don't mind trying to get things right physically. I'm trying to figure out ways to diffuse difficult things. But then there's just the creative joy. It's intense.
Is there a routine that you have that helps you get into this?
If I didn't have things to prepare for, it would be really like indulgent. It would be like completely indulgent.
Indulgent?
Yeah, it would be indulgent. Like so when I did that little cello prelude, right? All I had was this like I'd already done the Bach recording it was kind of in the bag, right? And then I had this just idea because something bothered me when I was hearing versions of it where people were treating it as if it's like this kind of willy-nilly free form fantasy thing. Which is not, to me it's very structured. When I hear that cello prelude, it sounds to me like the Sixth Brandenburg Concerto, and I would hear it echoing.
That's my favorite one.
Pulled out.
I used to play
almost like a delay pedal, right? And the viola has isn't it mostly like cellos?
There's no violin.
It's like viola, dark, right?
It's only viola, cello, and bass.
Right, that's about it sounds so crazy and amazing.
Yeah.
But when you think of it being, especially when Bach only has a cello, right? And you hear him repeat things, well, you know that he would tease these things out into answers and kind of dialogues, essentially. So I always heard it like that, and I had in the back of my mind, it's going to be like G major, and G major down. It's going to be really sonorous, and it's going to have lots of open strings to do these things. And I felt like this Brandenburg kind of version of it, not like in any clear way, but it was like a feeling, like a what do you call
intuition.
it? Like an intuition, like a kind of like a prediction or whatever. And so I started trying to do that, and it actually wasn't working in the G kind of idea, but the idea was kind of there. And then in A, key A, it also just started kind of happening by itself. It just kind of like, but that was me. And then I was like obsessive, as in like 3 days, 4 days of just doing that every time I picked the guiar up and nothing else. You know what I mean? Just being like indulgent, like overdosing on it, not thinking about just eating dinner and thinking about, because it had the agency of it was speaking, and I was getting answers. It had some turbine, so it almost sounds kind of strangely kind of magical, but that's the norm to me. It's not. If it's not that, I'm not feeling it. It's not working.
And so, is the guitar in your hands a lot of this time? 4 days.
Oh yeah, just while I'm working on it, I'm
Yeah.
trying things on the guitar by ear. I'm not like sitting with a pencil,
Right.
theorizing about it. I'm hearing and trying things, and it has to work physically through the guitar as well. It's the idiomatic.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of trying, and then just being like, oh yeah, that. And just sometimes you do the math. I do the math of it before I touch the guitar because I'll look at the score. And we'll see like, oh yeah, well there's this dominant pedal thing that happens. That's got to be an open string. This has to be blah blah blah, right? So that's why the key of A, I use a capo on it, but that's why it works that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then you have all those open strings, and yeah. And what's funny enough, I was telling you earlier, I started working on recently. That kind of vein started to open up again because someone was sending me the Allemande from that cello suite, and I started to think about it.
First cello suite.
Yeah, I started to get my juices flowing with that. But you know what? I realized I was trying, and I was doing stuff that was cool, but the key of A was not working at all, right? So what I'm doing is I'm just using the capo as part of the instrument, and I'll put it up to the 4th fret, and I'll do it in the G configurations, right? And it just opens up. It just becomes magical, like dialing. It just sings and exists, and you can get all these imitations, counterpoints within an Allemande type gesture. Usually they come kind of at the end of the bar, and then there's a lot of parallel stuff happens. There's a lot of, if you just look, so that's something I would do. I guess it's an informal scholarly thing to do, but I would be like, I would go and listen to 6 Allemands, the English suites, French suites. What does Bach do when he has no physical limitations, or even our 996, which has a lot of those kind of beautiful parallel 6 and 10s, can exist. So you get the idea that maybe there's a stylistic thing that isn't just the inflections of the dance, but there's kind of gestures and kinds of counterpoint that are more. And so an intuitive level, not like studying it like Cure for Cancer. I'm trying to just feel it, like what would Bach do on the keyboard with this, basically. And usually what I do, which is a little bit strange, is like I won't just jump to the territory of a slap in a few bass notes, especially in the cello suites.
Right.
Because I think Bach had the cello as the nature of the cello in mind too, is this under, so I'll sometimes tease apart things that I think are counterpoint in one line and put them in different octaves, but I'll also maybe introduce a voice above the thing, which I think then it's like, oh, now it starts to sound like Bach.
Yeah.
As opposed to just cramming lower thing,
Right. Because when I heard it, I sent you that Vida der Dr. Sunde, that cantata that Glenn performed, and there are gestures in there that reminded me of what you did.
Yeah, and I'd never heard that, but I concur.
And then there's something else that I think it was either, we've all played the Sheep May Safely Grace, right? We've all played that, but I swear there are elements from that cantata that also.
Yeah, the thing is like if you have a lot of that stuff, just you develop maybe a bit of just an intuition or your own kind of Bach machine, maybe of just like, well, this sounds like Bach a bit more, Like whenever I'm doing, can I steal your guitar?
Why not?
With your permission.
New strings, so you may have it too.
Like when I'm going like, I can't play without the capo. But this kind of, it's like when you do a concert and you can't play anything.
Sure.
This kind of,
right,
like I want to hear those things.
Yes.
I just can't not
I know.
how that involved. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense.
So if you're doing just your,
Yeah, I get it.
and you just kind of, you have these. They aren't new strings. And this kind of, that kind of.
That's from the brand. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's just it starts to sound like Bach.
Yes.
To me, and I don't mean that in some kind of weird. I just mean that very honestly.
Yeah.
Like that's what I want. It's like a drug I want.
Mm-hmm.
I've got this problem.
Yeah.
And I need more. I need more cowbell.
Yeah.
Gotta have more cowbell.
You want more diminished chord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the big factors that distinguish Bach. When you hear any other Baroque composer, you could be listening to the radio and some kind of think could be Corelli, it could be Vivaldi, it could be Handel, Telemann, whatever. But one of the big signifiers of Bach is like the third or fourth harmonic gesture. He's got this big diminished chord, the big juicy.
Juicy is right.
Disturbing.
Yeah.
That has this kind of this kind of agoraphobia, right? This kind of wonder. This kind of like
If you're tuned into it.
This is strange, but right as well. Kind of like a fearsome thing. So I think that's what I am drawn to, partly to that you don't get as much with.
When did these things connect for you? Like, you're much younger. Like, for example, when I was much younger, for funny reason, funny thing, the Brandenburgs were also my first CD, like my first Bach.
Yeah, I can't really, the actual fascination with it. I was like I was saying to you before, I was like one of these little kind of shredder guitar kids in the late '80s, and so there was a lot of this kind of these people who do these kind of pseudo classical gestures and sequences, and Yngwie Malmsteen and stuff.
Yeah.
And so that kind of captured my imagination as being like, whoa, it sounded really cool. And I used to do that kind of thing, and mess around with that, and try on. But then one of those people actually wrote in their linear notes, like, I like this thing, J.S. Bach for all the inspiration. And I was like, who's this J.S. Bach guy? If Vinnie Moore likes him.
Yeah.
And so that's actually why I saw this other cassette tape when I was walking home from school. It was like Bach concertos. Yeah, so I bought this, and then I was like, it hit, it's very strange for a kid, like working class, Belfast kid. I mean, music kind of bit me, and it became like my toy, it became my thing. It wasn't like usually kids will learn about art music from kind of easily, either from being in a place that's a very sophisticated place, like New York or San Francisco, where there's opportunities to hear things for free, or else from a certain kind of affluence, and like, we're going to send you to piano lessons, and we're going to bump into this stuff, and it's like bling of sorts, you get a lot of people with classical music concerts that don't really even like, it's like a thing to be at,
that's right?
It's like the theater.
Yeah, that's right. We'll go meet this weekend. Yeah, what are you doing this weekend?
We shall be attend the symphony, So it's a very strange thing to start to be obsessed with, like nothing kind of you tell your friends about, openly. So it was like this thing, but it had to do with the kind of widdly electric guitar stuff that kind of gave me permission into it. And then that started to take over more. I would just wear this tape out, like the double violin concerto, tried to learn things by ear. I was just obsessed with the counterpoint. And then your teacher, and someone who I've met in the last 2 years, Elliot Fisk, there's kind of a parallel. At a similar time, my dad was working in Germany, and he had a friend who had studied with Elliot Fisk. And he had sent back a tape of a couple of Elliot Fisk albums with my dad to me. And I was like listening to this, and I was like, oh my gosh, what the heck is this? Like my little guitar head couldn't do this by ear. there was like three guys playing at the same time. You
Right.
know? And I was like, this is so beautiful, and then that kind of fed the obsession. And I wrote to Elliot about that Fisk plays fantasies recording. That Vice that he plays, that fantasy is like my favorite guitar recording.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's even when I was playing that Vice today. Is in the back of my mind, you know, his approach to that. So these things kind of converged, and then you would just get interested in it, and you would be like, well, no, yeah, and I bought this Gorn Schulcher Deutsche Grammophon, Luke Sweets, whatever, you know that exists, and then you buy the Brandenburg Concertos, you start to develop, and then you're like, oh, you get the Four Seasons, you get the, and you just develop a taste for it, I guess, that kind of stuff. But my parents had a little cassette too that I was obsessed with. It was called Classics by Candlelight, that they would play when they had friends over for dinner. And it had the most amazing music. It had this F minor Chopin Nocturne, Juliet arranged for guitar. It had a slow movement of Schubert's Rosamund String Quartet, which is amazing.
Yeah.
The slow movement of the New World Symphony, Moonlight Sonatas, just very beautiful, the highest sophistication music that exists, between that kind of time period, that just becomes pop music, becomes irresistible music to a 11, 12-year-old kid in Belfast, bizarrely. So I would listen to that, just because it made me feel like music. It's like the moon going over the sea, or like a metal detector. You hear a certain harmony, it's like wah wah. You respond to it. It gives you feel. It's like real. It's like a real algebra of the soul. And it's a very strange thing because of that. Because you think these are kind of arbitrary feelings, but they're not.
Right.
So if I tell you that very specific thing about St. John's Passion, and talking about those staccato basses and stuff, we know that we're feeling the same thing, and we could actually describe it at a very high level of nuance.
That's right.
To where it gets to be very, very specific, And so what occurs then is that there's this almost mathematical thing that happens in music that's quantifiable. We've got counterpoint theory, we have musical harmony analysis, and it seems like a kind of a science of sorts, right? But then it has this almost scientific consistency of effect on the human spirit, which is very bizarre. It's almost like a cosmological argument. So,
and you partly refer to that as truth.
As a form of truth. And so even if you're making an arrangement, if you're having the audacity to add an extra line to some kind of Bach solo work, you're searching for that, really. You're searching for the thing that is true. It's like, that's the answer. That's and sometimes you're like the monkeys randomly typing until they write Shakespeare, compared to what Bach would have done, right? Just kind of like poring over it until the thing occurs. But then you start to pick up little ways of doing it better, I guess, or imagining it before you even start.
I mean, to my ear, the way you do it makes sense, and it's very natural. It sounds like Bach.
Yeah, well, I just do it by ear,
Yeah.
so if it doesn't sound right, it's not right. And that's just a good counterpoint. I mean, people really think they study counterpoint. It has all these rules and species,
Right.
and sure that exists or whatever, but really the answer to counterpoint is that it always sounds right.
Right. And our job is to combine like the physical and the oral.
Yeah, and it was just I'm not good at I don't do counterpoint. Like I haven't really, I'm not like, I did this degree in counter, I don't, never interested me, like even studying that in a sense, but like when I finished that stuff, like Stanley Yates knows species counterpoint inside out, and he's like, yeah, all the counterpoints are perfect, but it's just, does it sound good or not?
Right.
That's going to be your answer. And sure, things to us can sound good. Like for instance, I love the way parallel fifths sound. You know what I mean? It sounds very haunting to me sometimes. Let alone parallel octaves, that doesn't even sound like parallel to me. It's just like every time a church organ plays, it's parallel octaves, right?
Right.
So that was the one thing I think was the counterpoint sin. Was there was one parallel octave that Stanley found, and he was like, oh, it's just, it's not in the bass, so it's, or whatever, it's not noticeable. But you're just doing these things and you're playing them out through your hands and using your imagination until it sounds right. And you're maybe thinking through music. We talk about, like, there's an amazing film by Gerhard Richter, the great German painter. This is called Richter Paints, I think, Richter Painting. And it has footage of him in the 60s when he was younger. And it's like, and he's saying, like, how can I talk about painting when painting is a form of thinking? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, so music itself, it's like trying to talk about it objectively, like without like this, it is its own form of thought in a way. So that's kind of more what I'm talking about trying to live when I say, well, the sounds good stuff. It's not like there's not thought going on, but it's thought through music.
Yeah.
It's not thought of as a different
It's a process.
objective thing.
Right. Right.
You're inside of it.
Yeah.
You've stepped into the room.
Right.
And and you're processing it. And there's a lot of thought, right? Sometimes it's in a very kind of a quick flow state type way. But it's not this kind of like separate, empirical, thing, and you're in it and you're using it. And really it's taking you through itself, hopefully.
Yeah.
In the best possible sense.
And earlier when we were having dinner, I think you said more than one of the Bach. Bach is probably someone who gets bored. Right? And
sure, yeah.
And I had that feeling, that's why I started writing music. And I wanted to double check with you to see if there's any truth to that for your life and your music.
Well, in terms of like playing the guitar and arranging music,
yeah,
like for guitar. Well, I started really like loving music, like in a deep sense. Like like art music, classical music, whatever you want to call it. Even before I started playing classical guitar, so I was in kind of this very deep love affair with certain Beethoven pieces, certain Chopin pieces, certain Fauré, Ravel, Debussy. Music is the thing. The guitar is just a tool, right? So then, much to the chagrin sometimes of my teachers and stuff, I can't play this Giuliani piece. It's just not good.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Yeah.
And so, with the huge risk of offending anyone that listens to this, that's a big problem. I mean, sometimes you get these amazing players that can, and when I say, be patient with me when I say bad music, because I'm just using it as a dialectic kind of thing. You can play bad music, you can play it really well, and it can come off. Maybe like some kind of Paganini thing, you can pull it off with this aplomb. Because there was like all these writings about Giuliani and Paganini, people were just amazed by the singing tone and them as performers, or like, I'm sure it was the same with like Farinelli. Whatever music was written for him almost didn't matter because he was such an artist, as his vehicle of beauty. And I think of maybe Giuliani as something like that, like Paganini was. You can't compare Paganini's music to Mozart. It's not. Or whatever. But so you can play, and when I say bad music, I don't mean bad, like it's bad. I just mean it's not the best thing.
I know what you mean.
I want the best thing all the time. I'm not, so you have amazing players that can play music that's maybe not as sophisticated, and they can bring something out of it just by their sheer beauty of of articulation and whatever.
Yeah.
But even that's rare.
That's true.
Usually what we're coming across is people playing bad music badly.
That's right.
And that's not good.
Yeah.
That's not good.
Life is short.
And playing great music badly, not that great either, but at least maybe more interesting. So sometimes there's a lot of so I my own addiction to a need to like, as if, you know, to get like a Chopin piece for the guitar or whatever it is, that's just more a completely selfish thing. I want to be with this music. I want to be with this person.
I feel that too.
And I don't want to waste my time. You know, I'll find the odd little merch piece and I'm like, that's kind of cool. This little source that kind of sounds like Schubert. Yeah. It's like, well, I should just play some Schubert.
Right.
You know, reduce it properly. Right. And rewrite it through the guitar. Right. Rewrite this Beethoven. I'm gonna do that probably. Some Beethoven. Just rewrite it through the guitar, so it's the same information. It's just being reduced. And you're not trying to do something really creative. You know, a lot of times people do arrangements and they bring in unnecessary things that aren't important. Yeah. They're not what the music is. Yeah. And then they'll like spend 17 years trying to do this one shift, and it's not even what makes it good. That's right. Just take the thing out. Yeah. It's inessential. Yeah. And Stanley's great at that. Stanley taught me that with his arrangement. So he arranged that Vega piece. You know, he's done this Chopin Ballade. You're just taking things that, basically things that if you go in another room and you're playing it on a stereo, take out everything that you don't hear when you're in another, you know what I mean? Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. And music is strangely counterintuitive in terms of periphery and focus. You know, the focus in music is in the two outer voices, even the furthest away, which is very ironic. If you're a pianist, you're nearly always playing the lowest note and the highest note with your pinky. Very strange, isn't it? To give the pinky the most important notes all the time. Well, they have incredible fingers. We develop them. Yeah. But so then the stuff that's internal is more peripheral in music. Now, when it comes to amazing pieces like, you know, Mozart's late symphonies, or, you know, these juicy, you know, internal lines that kill you. Yeah. Then it becomes very important. You got to hear that and squeeze it in there somehow. Yeah. And you use your ear, you use your discernment, and then you rewrite it through the guitar, through the idiomatic facility, what's within reason. Yeah. It can be difficult. Sometimes you have to like learn something, but you know, has to be reasonable. See, the way I think about it is, I want to participate in this. Yeah. Right. And then there's a third movement of Brahms' Third Symphony that every now and then I just think maybe it's possible. Oh, sure. And then I looked at it, I was like, hey, some guy tried to do it on YouTube already. Well, you always find some like 12-year-old that's done it like awesomely. Well, no, it wasn't awesomely, but it wasn't that one. Well, I find, to be honest, when I actually get a little bit, if I think I've really solved something, like that Raindrop Prelude, it's just like a guitar piece, you know, it's just done, and I'm always like curious when I see it, and I'm like, okay, what are they gonna do? Are they gonna like figure out my secrets? Right. Even though it's published. It's like, no, they always do it wrong. Yeah. I'm always like, no, you didn't. Oh God, what? Really? Have you listened to this piece before? Right. What? You're putting that like little delicate repeated motif in like on the D string, you know, like this blong blong. You know, it's like you miss the spirit. If you even do you listen to me, you know? Right. So there's a little bit of that of just you have to listen. You have to and doing a great test. If you're a burgeoning composer too, it's just to completely arrange something only using your ear. Just completely use your ear. And like I did when I was a kid, that's all I did. So I kind of developed a certain scaffolding, I think, with music and only hearing it. Actual ear training. Yeah, exactly. Or any jazz player will tell you they don't learn a bunch, you know, real jazz players just learn lines. Yeah. And they happen to end up being a lot of 251 licks and stuff, but they're not sitting and slavishly learning. Oh, this is the right triad of it. They learn to sing it on their instrument. They learn lines.
Yeah.
And that's what they did in the Baroque time, in the Renaissance. That's what at these what's the one of the orphanages, the conservatories, right? You've probably been to a few conservatories. You know where that comes from, right?
Yeah, you're talking about Vivaldi.
Yeah, the conservatories were these Italian orphanages that were there to conserve life, because at these ports like Naples and trying to think of one of the major ports would have been in
Venice, probably.
and they would have had a lot of sailors come in. There's a lot of pregnancies. There's a lot of like, I can't have this child right away, So there's these babies were brought over, and they would have this whole ceremony of bringing these babies in, and then they would give them a trade, and they would teach them to and father all these children. Like the church would conserve their lives, and that's where the word conservatory comes from, a music conservatory. And so they learned these things. They learned by ear. They learned bass lines. They learned the counterpoints to sing over all the possibilities. Very intuitive, very by ear, right? It's nothing like our kind of tortured thing. And you wonder why people don't
get it.
Respond to that in music theory class, and it's because they've just beaten it to death. It's not.
It's the AP,
Exactly, totally, and it's not. And counterpoints could really different, and it's not figured bass harmony at all. It's its own thing. And harmony occurs from it. You know what I mean? The counterpoint kind of comes first. And you find that strangely occurring even in the great harmony mass like Bach, but the ones you won't expect, like Beethoven and Mozart in their late works, they become engrossed with counterpoint. They become obsessed with it. Mozart goes from being mop-top Mozart. He discovers Bach, Leipzig, pores over it for a week, is kind of freaked out, and then he turns into the White Album, Mozart, right? And then Beethoven obviously is obsessing over Bach type things. He's getting more complex as things go on, and grows a few.
With Mozart, one of my favorite examples is the last movement of the Jupiter Symphony. The strata,
It's got like 4 different themes, recognizable.
Yeah, and he stacks them all on top of each other.
The slow movement of that, Jupiter, is the heartbreak, that internal voice of that is clarinets.
He had something special with the clarinet.
He did, and he did that in his arrangement of Handel's Messiah, which is fun. If you listen to that, he's got like a whole little wind section. It's like some little Mozart-y string winds dialogue, right? Which is the beginnings of what's kind of normal to us, silly, but it's just endless when you get, even when I teach people to write songs, like I steal the guitar, like I always say, like a line is better than a chord, right? So if you have sounds like an ancient Baroque instrument.
It does. It sounds like gut strings or something. Are those gut strings?
These human gut strings.
I like the wound trebles.
The wound trebles, okay.
They have more beef and more sound.
So you have like, if you have like a song that's like, rows of houses all staring down me. You know that song, right? Radiohead. All these things into position. It doesn't really sound like much, it's a nice melody, but when you hear the actual song, and it's like right, because a line,
Mhm.
a line draws the ear, just like a line in a painting draws your eye across something.
Yeah.
It gives it instant structure. It gives it time and shape. It forces you a certain way. That just sheer, So if we only think in sheer harmony and not in lines, we're kind of starting on the wrong starting block, I think. And I think harmony becomes more endless when you think in terms of lines upon lines, which is the Renaissance. I mean, the discovery, the Josquin. If you do it in the right way, and sometimes you get very strange harmony.
That's right.
Right, like just Waldo, like you were talking about, right? But it's kind of wonderful too.
Yeah.
Those lines, he didn't come up with those strange harmonies from harmony.
That's right.
It comes from some kind of attempted counterpoint.
Right.
So that's the strange thing. And the guitar is a kind of a counterpoint instrument. Like when you started wanting to play the guitar, but this, it's just like it sounds awesome.
Yeah,
right.
That's right.
And anyone can kind of nearly do it.
Yeah.
With a few, a few
Blunders.
Exactly.
Symbols.
Exactly. So there's just something about the hand on the guitar, the ancientness of that. And in fact, Palestrina was a lutenist, and Palestrina was known to kind of map out his choral pieces on his lute.
Oh.
Riddle me this, Batman.
I didn't
So
know
the
that.
guitar is, when I throw the lute in with the guitar, it's just a kind of a guitar.
Yeah.
It just doesn't sound as good. It's a different thing, but it's kind of the same thing. So you have this amazing ancientness with the guitar that is almost beyond the event horizon of known history, of this kind of slightly technological harp. Where we stick our finger down and it's a new string, right? Just this invention of, it's kind of got that very interesting draw to it, of antiquity, and
it's kind of primal.
And the touch of the hand, and that's what I love about when people do those Baroque ensembles and stuff. It's much more visceral when you hear those gambas and slightly breathy bows and articulation. It's
a little noisy.
More gutsy, it's kind of got this. There's a great, I think it's a quartet, a Nevermind quartet, from Jean Rondeau, the harpsichords. They're really good. That's what I like, that sound. I'd actually love to write like a modern piece for a Baroque ensemble.
Yeah.
I'd like to write like a real piece for a therevo. Because they're so ubiquitous now.
Yeah.
Because of the early music scene.
Yeah.
That they've turned back into instruments again.
Right.
And they shouldn't just be museum pieces. They shouldn't just be curators of the
behind
antiquity.
glass. Right.
Yeah, they should become instruments again.
Right.
Just like the guitar came back to life during the kind of guitar mania that struck Vienna, where it was the most popular thing. So, anyway, I like the sound of some of those things. I think he could write some very interesting music for viola da gamba. It's just very. It's just right.
Now I have a strange segue, but it's and I mentioned to you earlier. I don't know how to ask this question, but I didn't know about you until recently. And
I didn't know about me either.
Okay, well that helps me out.
Sorry, that was so.
No, but I think you get where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
Because let me in my brain I'm thinking, who's this Alan Mearns? Oh, he's playing at the GFA in a couple months. And I felt like you mentioned this very briefly, so I thought if you could expand on it, which is, it sounded to me like something matured, or your voice, like it developed, and you.
Well, you mean like just the with the classical guitar stuff.
Yeah, the
I mean,
classical
well,
stuff,
I started. I just kind of got bored of classical guitar and
That's fair.
academia at
Yeah.
a certain point. But it wasn't just like a negative thing. I was wanting to start a band. I was writing songs. This kind of fever.
Mhm.
It's something I do as well, very seriously, as seriously, if not more. But I always kind of played the guitar still. I play for myself a little bit, and I played at quite a high level when I was doing a master's degree with Stanley.
Mhm.
So I kind of had the childhood,
Mhm.
ability, But then when I started trying to do this box stuff, I had a high enough level where I could maintain it, even when I was doing other things a little bit, even though I wasn't really playing that much. But then when that music itself came back to me and it's on its own terms,
Mhm.
it wasn't linked to any kind of requirement, or it was just the actual love of the music and the fascination with it. And I just started doing it a lot more and kind of toying around with these things and composing things. Yeah, so
I think
I guess
that's
there's a certain hiddenness and maturity and a certain pathway, that isn't always the right way, isn't always do this expedient,
right.
most seen thing, or
Get your masters, win your competition.
right. It's not really. You're not going to come up with something valuable without depth or going somewhere
Mhm.
on your own accord and going on your own little hero journey, I guess.
Sure.
And embracing a certain amount of obscurity
Mhm.
and embracing the art itself. I almost think of it in kind of like theological terms. My dad's a preacher, so forgive me for all that stuff.
I like it.
Offends you.
No,
But
I love it.
it's almost like if you seek first
Mhm.
the art
Mhm.
itself, like seek first the kingdom of God, and all of these things will be added unto you. And you'll do something that's worth something. And a lot of these things work for me like that too. It's like you cannot serve art and money. You love one and hate the other.
Yeah.
This seems to be true to me. You have to be the thing.
Mhm.
You have to go after the thing,
Mhm.
like it's holy.
Yeah.
Like Van Gogh did, or Bach did, and a lot of these people arrived in a worldly sense at the wrong timeline.
Mhm.
Right? They were too early. They were too late. They were too whatever. Some people, their talent arrived at a very, like Rossini or something, became very wealthy, but then he stopped composing.
Yeah, that's right.
And money came in. Or
Drink too much alcohol.
the first two Coldplay albums,
Mhm.
great. Everything else, total shit.
Yeah.
Right. Success is difficult.
Mhm.
When you have success, in a sense, because it is your food, and and there's also a link between art and suffering.
Mhm.
This is what this De Profundis is about.
Mhm.
The Oscar Wilde book I was telling you, which is a treatise about art and suffering, and that which I believe that most art is almost like a transmogrification of pain into beauty.
Mm.
Like Rumpelstiltskin making gold out of straw, or the alchemical idea, the creation of some kind of gold, or spiritual metaphor for eternal life, let's say. So the idea that pain, suffering, becomes something beautiful.
Right.
And that happens in songs a lot, or it's like a catharsis.
Yeah.
Or you don't play the blues to have the blues. You
That's
play
right.
the blues to get rid of the blues.
Happens in mythology.
Exactly. It's inherent in our kind of archetypal DNA, what we know, right? So there's a kind of a element to that, I think, that's true in art, which is completely counter to our kind of corporate mythologies, or our just comfort mythologies, because you actually are looking for the grail. You're looking for the pearl of great price. You're looking for the alchemical whatever answer that these things are irrelevant, you know. So it's not a matter of, you know, when I'm with music, I am in the holy of holies.
Mhm.
I am strung out on heroin. I'm all these things,
Yeah.
and you know, and it's in the cathedral of music, capital M music, and I just need some food. So I don't. What I mean to say in context is I don't need worldly success
Mhm.
for it to be
Mm.
a endeavor that's worth
Right.
pursuing.
Yeah.
Or that's not where I measure the success.
Right.
And I do measure success if there's someone I highly respect, validates, like if Elliot Fisk thinks when my Bach thinks it's cool,
Yeah.
it means something to me because he means something to me artistically, right? Or if I show something to Stan, and I'm like, what about this? And he's like, ooh.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, and I do that with my poetry too. I have a poetry mentor, and it's brutal. Like, if it's not the real thing, he can smell it. It's just like, he's like, real might help, you know? And I go through him like it's like going up to an electric fence, because he'll tell you the truth, right?
Yeah.
So this is where I live. This is more sacred to me than
Sure.
worldly success. I'm not very good with those things anyway. But I know what I'm good at is being inspired and coming up with stuff. So I have to give that time, and I have to like give myself to that. But I also need it in a spiritual sense, and I need it in a recreational sense. I need it, you know. It's like living in the world of beauty. It's where the riches are.
Right.
You know.
Right. Is there much of a boundary between when you're composing music and when you're just when you're playing guitar? When you're, I don't want to say noodling, but when you're
No, I mean a lot of, noodling is very underrated. It sounds like it's a. I mean, there's no doubt that all the great composers wrote by ear. You know, now when you get into certain music that's simpler, not in a sense of it has clearer rules. Obviously, Bach could hear the things that he was doing, and they had certain consequences. So,
Right.
but when you get into certain richer signs, stranger signs, all composers. Stravinsky was the first one to kind of admit this. He wrote like, you know, where he said, I'm like a peasant, just banging on the piano. Like it just is kind of like a rustic, like a, you know, like I know nothing except what I like the sound of, basically, right? And obviously he mapped out, he had a lot of thicky things as well. He had like things he would, these kind of structures and stuff. But you know, Debussy is famous for, you know, you just know when you hear Chopin, when you hear Debussy, this is music that's been found and discovered and heard, and ooh, that, oh yeah, that. Let me try this. And so music, what we've really lost in classical music is a fundamental tradition of improvisation. And so, you know, like you said, you know, you're apologizing for saying noodling as if trying out things or slash improvising is a kind of pejorative thing, or lesser than, as if you just music comes to you in this abstract way, and it's complete nonsense.
Right.
There's no worthwhile music in our kind of modern sense. It's really written like that. It's heard, it's tried out, it's experimented with. It's a form of improvisation, and obviously when the music is more complex, it's not just improvisation. So when you're trying to find the piece and how it should really be, it's very, very slow motion improvised. You're trying a lot of things, but you're trying to settle for the most essential thing, and the thing that gives you that kind of, you know, moon to ocean reaction, whether it's a song or a piece of art music. So it's just experimentation, and these are things that all composers were familiar with. I mean, a lot of Bach's work are these like kind of improvisations, these fantasies, and they're not the same thing as St. John's Passion. you know, they're not, you know, they're not the same thing as the, you know, the Italian concerto, or they're a different type of thing.
One of my favorite pieces.
Yeah, me too. So when something has to, you're trying to get something perfect, you know, you're not going to be able to just improvise that unless it's very, very simple. You know? So if I almost improvise something, I come up with an idea that's very potent, I'll just record it on the video phone. You know, this is an idea. It means I don't have to, you know, you can come back to it because it had potency, it had energy, it hummed with a thing that seemed real and true. Like as if I heard some piece and, oh, that Mompo piece, it did something for me. It's like I needed it in my life. That's what I have the same criteria of my own music.
Right.
I have to react to it objectively and be like, oh, that had a thing. And I know it's not mine anyway, it's just music itself. It's just this combination of different criteria
But you
that
caught
excited me. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've caught the kind of the firefly.
Right.
And that's what really happens. I used to always think of it in terms of like if you're fishing, like you go out and fish for an idea. But really the truth is that you're the fish. And what you want is to be hooked by an idea and pulled through it, whether you want to or not, until it reaches all of its implications.
Destiny.
Yeah, all of these working out things.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I definitely have the guitar around. I could use a piano. I'm not a pianist because it's just music. Sometimes when I write songs, I use the piano to befuddle myself deliberately, to throw myself only onto my ear because I don't have proficiency in it.
Yeah.
And with songs, that's fine because you don't want a lot of unnecessary things with a song. You want beauty, concentrated simplicity.
Yeah.
And same on the guitar, but the guitar is very mysterious though, because it's like this ongoing kind of like, it's got this infinite grid of tone, you know, sonorities and strangeness to it. And you never get bored of it. So it's always magical to me. The guitar is always transformative and strange and ancient. And so I can see the guitar, you know, and I'm like excited by its presence. Because I know that there's like secrets in it. It has, you know, it sounds very strange, but it's just, and I just know, it's like when, I'm not comparing myself to Mozart, but I'm talking about the compositional process.
Sure.
Mozart said, I write music like a pig pisses. Now, he didn't mean that just to be crude, like music is like piss, or I'm like a pig. He meant like, I know when music is coming. I can feel it. And so does Neil Young.
Yeah.
You know, he was on Charlie Rose, he's like, when I have that feeling, I'll just leave a party and completely obedient to the muse. Or, you know. So Mozart said, I write music like a pig pisses. And he's like, oh, there's some music coming. I can feel it in my musical bladder.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that feeling too.
Yeah.
And when you're entering into a state of heightened intelligence, there's intelligence behind your intelligence. It's like Pac-Man eating the cherry, and everything happens quicker and more real, and things happen, you know, that you can't force. You can't decide for that to happen. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
But I'm very easily inspired.
That's amazing.
And and I'm always trying things, you know, it might lead to a whole piece, it might lead to a potential piece. And you might sit on an idea for a little while. And I'm trying to finish this first sonata, quote unquote sonata, called Dream Tigers, after the Borges poetry book, for my friend Marco Sartor. You know him?
Yeah.
He probably went to Yale similar time.
I think after me. Yeah.
So he's a great guy, a great guitar player.
Yeah.
And I love Borges.
Mm-hmm.
And he's from Montevideo, which is just a stone's throw from Buenos Aires, the place of Borges. So as a poet, like I love Borges, and as a thinker. So I've got this piece that I call him the Dream Tigers, probably just to be evocative, but it also gives me a kind of juice to that's what it sounds like. That's this sound. It sounds like Borges, but it's a piece of music. You know? So I have this thing that happened very quickly. It's 2 minutes, and that's a lot of what you do in composing. Is like you'll get 2 minutes, and then you turn that into 8 minutes or 10 minutes. And you'll respond to the things, and that's basically what sonata form is.
Right.
Something comes back, perhaps.
Yeah, you're expanding the idea.
Yeah. But it happens organically. Is what I'm saying. That's why I put it in parentheses because I'm not interested in Beethoven sonata form. You know, I'm not interested in writing a Ponce sonata.
Right.
It's not interesting to me at all. But just most things are sonata form. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, it's a human thing to have to expand on an idea.
yeah, and for it to be the right amount and the right length, to be digestible, and to feel it right, and it's going to have a certain curve.
And contrast the idea. With
Yeah,
something
to do something different and then to come back again. So you know, an ABA form is kind of a sonata form in a sense. Maybe a little praise. It's kind of it does something else and it comes back. I don't need to know much more than that.
Well, it's a very human thing. It's like
It's like symmetry. It's like the earth and the sky. It's like rhyming couplets. It's just it's there already before us, before we're doing it. You know, it's already there. So that's some of the process is just waiting for the right thing because I'm not just going to do anything to get something done. It has to be the thing. It has to have the same potency as the original idea. So it's a lot of times when I'm composing, I'll be kind of certain chunks will come, and then I'm kind of connecting chunks like a comedian.
Sure.
Not that it's some kind of through compose willy-nilly thing, but it's just like that's how it comes. In these chunks, and this is going to go here, and in my mind I'm kind of like, oh, how do I get to this today? And then the answer comes.
I like to say I wrote every one of my papers in the shower.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And that happens for sure. Yeah. You really do write things. You go for a walk, and there's a beautiful documentary I saw when I was younger on the guy who solved Fermat's last equation. Andrew, you a second. But it was because it reminded me when he was talking about it, when it occurred to him, it was like he was talking about it like it was music, or it was like an answer of a painter he didn't give it. And he said he was just on one of his walks around the pond, where we know that ambulating triggers thought, right? Walt Whitman, Beethoven walk every, So your brain, because it takes so much of your brain to walk on 2 feet. That's why it takes us like 1.5 years to learn.
To learn how to walk.
Right, those are giraffes. Just get up. So once you start walking, you start thinking. You go with a really good friend, and you go for a walk. You can walk for 2 hours, and it feels like 2 minutes.
That's right.
So you have these great ideas when you walk. But that's true. You build these things, and then it all comes out. Like you said, you write your paper in the shower because it comes to you. But this guy who solved Fermat's last equation, he started talking about the moment when it occurred to him, and he started tearing up. It was it's amazing. He had to stop himself because he knew it was like this thing occurred, it was given to him. And that's where we live, as musicians. To me, it's like either divine or nothing.
Yeah.
It sounds very harsh. But I don't like good music. I'd almost rather listen to really bad music than good music. It has to be divine.
I see what you mean.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not listening to I'm not listening to Liszt, or I'm not listening to so I'm listening to Chopin. I'm not listening to most offend lots of people. Brahms, a bit wooden. I love his Requiem. I love a couple of movements of some symphonies, but it's Schubert just pours out. It just happens. He's not trying. I have to have that. The divine thing.
Do you know the, I think it's the F sharp minor piano, four hands?
This is
Schubert.
my son was just playing that
Really? Yeah.
for his. He's a pianist,
Yeah.
and just on his first, and that was his ensemble piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a stunning
Yeah. Well,
piece.
once you hear like the Rosenbaum String Quartet or Death and the Maiden, it's like I need that in my life.
Right.
It's just like all the way through. Or Chopin's batting average.
Mhm.
You just can't turn it off.
Right.
Chopin has more music.
Yeah.
In like one little 2-minute prelude than some entire operas, right? Or entire. It's like if you were to say to me, if that Raindrop Prelude, or say one of the great nocturnes, if that was to be deprived from humanity,
Right.
you know, what composers would you just take away all of their stuff?
Mhm.
And there's a lot of them.
Because
Famous
it was
composers.
a building block for.
No, just because it's so good. It's so valuable.
Yeah.
Like the world without the Raindrop Prelude.
Mhm.
I won't say anything because I've already said too much.
Yeah.
And I've been on people's hit lists probably for saying that before watching this. But just because someone's a famous classical composer, that doesn't mean anything to me. It has to be the thing.
Sure.
It has to be divine. It has to be the shit. It has to be amazing.
Yeah.
I'm just not interested. And so certain composers occasionally achieve Chopin for like a little piece here and there.
Yeah.
Right? He's just doing it all the time.
Mhm.
And so if somebody were to say to me, like, this composer, in order to have the Raindrop Prelude exist, would you get rid of this composer's entire catalog? And I would say yes. Just for that one piece.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
Right.
And so that sounds very harsh and disturbing, but it's true for me. You know, it's like when something is just the thing, and it's not, it's not always Mozart and Chopin. Like there's like the Peter Eberson's Neruda songs are like that for me. They're like music I have to have in my life. Those orchestral songs of his wife. She was dying of breast cancer. And the amazing soprano, is soprano. And she's a mixture.
I don't know.
Lorraine Hunt Lieberson.
Mhm.
It's just amazing music.
Yeah.
And there's just things that you reach for that you need. It could be the little Satie Gnossienne, it could be Fauré's Requiem, it could be, this is just selfishly what I need, but it has this kind of thing to it that isn't just well done or clever, or
Right.
it's not just sophisticated, it's not just complex, it's not enough.
Yeah.
It has to have the thing.
Yeah.
It's the same with songs.
Mhm.
It has to have the thing. It has that, or it's nothing.
Alan, I think what I'm grateful for is that there's someone like you who's thinking about these things and playing our instrument.
Well, it's the coolest instrument. Everyone just wants to play guitar because it's cool.
Yeah. But we can only listen to so much Giuliani.
Yeah, there's nothing. If you could play like I'd love to hear Giuliani play. I'd love to go back in time. That would be amazing. And I have this feeling that he was like as good as Paganini was.
Probably.
But there's just not a lot of harmonic movement.
Yeah.
In Sword, all this stuff. Mark Del Priora played this festival I was at recently, and he has this amazing arrangement of one of the Sword sonatas. You have to hear this; it's incredible. Because what he told me was that because it just sounds like Mozart. It sounds like a Mozart piano, like a string quartet. And he just said, it's like, whenever I got bored, I just did something. I just added something. But it sounds to me like Mark's a serious composer.
Cool.
He's like a serious guy, and you have to hear it. It has to be published because you just hear it. You're like, Mozart wrote a guitar piece.
Right. And that's what we want.
And that's what you want.
Yeah.
You got to give me the real stuff. You know,
Right.
he's got all these beautiful lines and these deceptive cadences that Mozart would, you know, and he just made it better.
Yeah.
He just made it nice.
Yeah.
You know, and that's, you know, but it takes a kind of, you have got to have some balls to do that, and you got to be able to do it well.
Well, I think what you did to Bach and your compositions are absolutely gorgeous. And so,
Appreciate that.
you know, we didn't really talk about it, but, you know, I hope people come hear you on Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I'll put all the stuff in the description and all that, but it was a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Alan.
Thank you.
Thanks.